What are early signs of a toxic relationship? When you realize that you are spending all your time dealing with their issues and never yours. That might not necessarily mean they are bad or toxic people either. You and them could be totally decent people and be good friends. But the way you fit together just doesn't work well for you. I've had both. More recently my last one. She is an amazing and beautiful woman. But I stalled. Even regressed. In personal growth. Just by being there. Not her fault. But the situation was toxic regardless. When they're emotional when you do leisurely things that don't involve them. Sir. This is a relationship. I need some space, damn it. The last girl I dated always got put off anytime I would do something without her. Keep in mind. I would hang out with her every day. I would make plans with her. We would go out every weekend. I would surprise her with fun dates a few times a month. We would spend nights together, probably 4-5 nights a week. I can honestly say that 90% of my free time was spent with this girl. Yet she still got upset over that 10% that I didn't always want to give to her. Like as if so bad that sometimes I just want time to myself? Or that I just want to spend some nights playing Xbox with my friends who I never get to see anymore? It's like she never noticed the time I gave her. Only the time I didn't. Very disheartening tbh. When they do something that makes you uncomfortable. And they get mad at you for expressing your discomfort. This always happened to me when I would call my ex out for downright gawking at other women while he was in public with me. Like, what am I supposed to do? Sit there and look stupid? Nah bro. Plenty of other dudes out there that know how to be respectful. This. I was on a second date when he asked me a personal question about knowing someone or not, and I told him I didn't want to answer or talk about that. He immediately turned cold. Then when I said I felt uncomfortable, he said he could pull over and I could walk home, late at night. Miles away from home. Funnily enough, I saw that guy for 6 months. I remember thinking, whoa. The second date and we're already fighting. This is clearly a sign this won't work out and this guy is toxic. But some men are skilled at manipulation. And I always felt like I was at fault. Or that he wasn't really like that. And I hate that it took me 6 months to figure it out. The relationship doesn't feel good. This is profoundly what I felt early on in my last relationship. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. That something was simply off. I brought up this feeling to him numerous times throughout our 6-year relationship and he countered it by saying things like, everyone feels like this in a relationship. You just have to work to get past it. I was a coward and a fool for agreeing with him each time. Not surprisingly, our relationship was garbage. It turned me into a mean, spiteful person towards him. If it feels wrong, it is wrong. Never ignore that feeling. Trying to control you. Giving you silent treatment. Trying to alienate you from your friends. Making you choose between them and your family, career, passion. Trying to police your social media. Pressuring you into sexual activities. My wife had only one friend locally. Her friend told her that she had bad vibes about me without even knowing me. I wasn't invited to a lot of stuff because her friend didn't want me involved. Even though she was treating me like shit, I said I didn't mind hanging out, but she basically told my wife that she needed to take a break from her. My wife was sad losing that friend but figured she probably was a good friend if she wasn't willing to share her with me. I bring this up because I felt like I was that guy alienating her from her friend. To this day I still feel bad that we couldn't all just be friends and shoulder the guilt. But it really wasn't my fault. When they start isolating you from your friends and wanting to know what you've been doing. Or where you've been. All the time. Or making you feel bad for not being with them. I feel like it goes both ways. I mean, it would be a sign of a toxic relationship if you started isolating yourself too and making yourself feel bad every time you're not around them. All taking and no giving. Subtly insulting you for their own pleasure. Money problems and or addiction. The subtle insults. Gentle teasing now and then is fine when it's mutual. But when the jokes are always at one party's expense, especially in front of other people. designed to belittle them, that's a red flag. When you don't feel like you can actually speak about your problems since they will take it personally or won't bother listening. And then they complain that you sit on things instead of getting them out in the open. Then when you tell them what's been bothering you, the cycle starts again. When they seem to argue with you a lot and make petty things into a huge dispute. It's stuff like this that makes you realize how much of a toxic relationship you're in. Also, when the only time they seem like they're not arguing is when they want something from you. When every argument is your fault and you have to be the one to apologize every time. Relatable. With my last relationship, I struggle with pretty bad depression and anxiety and thinking everything was or is my fault, and he made me feel even worse with that stuff. I'm in a relationship now that's making me feel much better and I'm slowly feeling okay again. Close bracket. Controlling behavior. It can start out as seeming like they are only looking out for your being by always having to be with you or asking who is on the phone hanging right next to you when you use it. Showing signs of being hurt that you are talking to, let's say your best friend, and not talking to or hanging out with them and then getting mad at you for it. The phone part is debatable. Could be just curiousness. Me and my partner usually ask each other that because we both don't get much phone calls, so when we do I usually assume something has happened or an emergency has went on. I'm in my early 30s, but from my experience, when you don't let your partner have their own independent life outside of the relationship, it's a red flag. Just for discussion's sake, I am friends with a couple who are absolutely attached at the hip. They work together, live together, visit friends together. Literally everything. I think it's weird. And probably not healthy, but they seem to like it. Is that still toxic? Again, this is just for the sake of discussion. I'm not really sure what I think aside from it being odd and a little annoying because I haven't seen my friend without their SO in years. Emotional manipulation. Also, when a person shares too much too fast. Trauma bonding is a thing. They share personal stuff to gain trust. Jealousy and controlling behavior. There's tons of sign but can be difficult to spot because you're smitten. If you find yourself allowing things you'd never allow or feel yourself withdrawing, something is definitely up. Just keep in mind that abuse isn't always physical. An inability to take responsibility for their own actions. Especially if you find yourself apologizing to them for being bothered by something they did. This. So much. I am working on repairing the psychological damage from years of having to jump through hoops to prove that it's not selfish, unreasonable, shitty of me to disagree with partners or have my own needs. Turns out always having to beg to have your feelings acknowledged, not even respected, just acknowledged, messes you up a bit. The whole time I thought it was my fault that I wasn't communicating properly or using the right words to explain my point of view. But in reality it was narcissism and selfishness on the other side. And nothing I could have done would have changed that. Gaslighting. Run fast. It never ends. Wanting to know exactly where you are, what you're doing, and who you're with all the time. Unhealthy power dynamics forming. You are having a conversation and all of a sudden they take offense at some misperceived slight. Then they blow it up out of nowhere. Then go on and on and on until you are in a fight and now you are defending yourself for some non-existent bullshit. You are also giving me PTSD from 2 nights ago. Still can't figure out where it came from and have no idea how it started, and I'm telling I try to explain what was said wasn't meant that way. But oh no, already went from A all the way to Z in a matter of seconds. In addition to many of the more obvious ones here. 1. Not apologizing and not taking responsibility for their actions. 2. Always constructing a narrative that absolves them of responsibility in any issue. Both of these indicate an unwillingness to admit fault in any way that bruises their ego. On a small level, it's not sorry I made us late because I lost track of time. It's well, you should have called me to make sure I had eaten before we got close to the time to leave, and why does the extra half hour matter anyway? In my experience this eventually turned into every issue, big or small, being 100% my fault no matter what. plus a dramatic rewriting of history to save her ego after the fact. The biggest ones I can think of are moving too quickly, pressuring you into a relationship, living together, children etc too fast and not taking no for an answer, disparaging remarks and general disrespect for your family, friends and often other random people like waiters. That's an early sign of alienation and also narcissism. Emotional manipulation. Do you try to start a conversation about your feelings, only to come out realizing they made the whole thing about them? Do they make you feel bad if you ever try to criticize them or express your own needs? It might be them manipulating you. Emo. Projecting. IDK might just be me, but if someone is constantly saying stuff like I know one day you'll wake up and be sick of me and just leave, or I know you'll end up cheating on me, then yeah. They're either traumatized because of a past relationship they haven't dealt with, or they're projecting their own habits. Being blamed for everything. Quickly escalating disagreements. Controlling behaviors. Underhanded comments implying cheating etc and increasing lack of space. Cycles of arguing. Breaking up then making up. Joking about your allergies, that someone would eat a certain allergic based food as a punishment. Yeah. That was a red flag. My ex was deathly allergic to legumes, all nuts, and our relationship turned toxic toward the end, but I would have never joked about that. I still worry about it to this day cause we have a kid together. Can't have her accidentally taking nut residue to mama. If, according to them, everyone they've ever dated before you mistreated them as crazy as to blame for their trust issues etc. And you're the first person who has ever treated me well. Be very careful. It absolutely could be true. But often people who are incapable of taking responsibility for their behavior create narratives like this around their past conflicts. And it can be very easy to get sucked in. The ego validation alone can be pretty seductive. Texting you every waking moment of the day to know exactly what you're doing and never giving you time to yourself. This may depend on the person though. To quote myself, and I'm sure many others, when it's good it's the best ever, when it's bad I want to die. A lot of people have that sentiment in bad relationships. What they don't realize is that the good was never as good as they thought it was. It just seemed that way because the bad was so bad. Also, toxic partners often bank on you clinging on to the good days so you don't leave them when they put you through hell. When you have to constantly and carefully police your words and actions to avoid setting them off. Whether it's an anger thing or a drama thing. Whether it's over jealousy, suspicion or neediness, or them being critical or whatever. If you have to constantly walk on eggshells because it will make your life stupidly difficult if you accidentally say or do something wrong that triggers them to respond irrationally. You know you have a problem. I think this is a good thing to pay attention to because it's non-specific to the type of problem. It applies equally to physical, emotional, and psychological abuse, and to those who are just energy sucking due to their own personal issues which may not be abusive at all. I think it's really easy to confuse toxicity with passion. People will have FK'd up habits like we spend all our time together. We fall asleep on FaceTime together, and it's little things like these that people think are passionate displays of love when they're really just building dependency and hindering trust when you're apart. It's so important to each be your own person. A hard truth is that no one is obligated to date anyone. If you start a relationship and their personal issues overpower any good, you don't have to date them at this exact moment. If someone isn't ready to love themselves, they aren't ready to love you. They don't let you sleep. Whether it be for something good or bad. My narcissist ex would keep me up all night. Whether for sex or sweet talk. Which turned into fights and manipulation. Despite knowing I had to wake up early for work. Sleep deprivation makes a person especially malleable. That was one of the first red flags I didn't know to look for. Followed by many more. The non-apology. They do something wrong or aggressive, but then apologize in a way that makes it your fault. I wouldn't get so angry if you just learned to make a frickin' sandwich. Close bracket. When you are dating in hopes of a commitment, but the other party informs you, after being intimate, they just want to be friends with benefits. Friends with benefits is not exactly toxic if it's a mutual agreement. However, I have had several attempted relationships fail after deceptions that the relationship was leaning toward exclusive. But that changed after sex. In short, don't allow yourself to be strung along and demoted to casual sex when you were hoping for a more traditional relationship. You might be tempted to be the sexual fulfillment and hope they may change their mind. But this will only bring you a world of hurt in the end. You're worth exclusivity. Signs could be subjective. Being honest with yourself and be conscious about the toxic relationship. You are part of it. You are toxic too. Be conscious about your own toxicity. Work about it. It will take your whole life constantly improve. That's one of the things life is about. Die. When they seem too good to be true. Go out of their way to make dramatic romantic gestures. Talk seriously about marriage after only a few weeks. And you feel like you lucked into a fairy tale storybook romance you don't deserve. You're getting love bombed by a narcissist. Run. I find the first sign when my friends are in a toxic relationship is that they start making excuses and validating a person's bad behavior way too much. When you omit telling your friends and family things because you think it will damage their opinion of your partner. If you're ashamed, there's probably a good reason. And it's easier to lie to yourself when you're keeping information from the people who know you best. I have seen this so many times. And I've never cut off a friend. I always let them know that I'll always be here for them. I have helped 3 women this way. Including my BFF and lil sis. Ultimatums don't help. Always keep your hand extended and your phone line open. If she doesn't take into account how her words can affect others. Had an ex-girlfriend who said I would just piss in her gene pool if we had kids. I'm a short man and was a tall woman. Same ex bragged about her sex life with the ex before me to all our friends while I was there. She didn't mean any of those things to hurt me. But she wanted to try to be funny or cool without taking into account how her words would affect others. After reading many of these, it makes me wonder if people like this have the ability to repair the damage they endured that made them this way. I don't believe people chose to be bad people often. They want to be better, but don't know how. When they don't let go of the past. And I'm not talking about something like cheating, that would be a different subject imo, but like either simple things or something they just can't shake. I say it's time to let the past go and just live on. So if they are constantly bringing up bad experiences from the past, time to go. While everyone's talking about controlling behaviors, I'd like to say, fighting. Seriously, any kind of bickering and fighting. I've been in many relationships where we did not fight. That's just not the way disagreements went. Theirs is absolutely not one reason you cannot find someone you actually get along with. So many people just live in these types of relationships. Think they're normal and that everyone fights. That is just not true. They tell you how amazing you are and how lucky they are to have met you. They talk about marriage very quickly and say you're the one and move themselves in very quickly. Too much too soon. Absolutely euphoria. Merging lives together. Complete infatuation with each other. This might be okay, but if you want to hang with your friends they don't respect your individuality. You find yourself throwing everything into the relationship but you are not married and it's still early. Passive aggression. Especially directed at you. Getting upset when you don't perform expectations that you never agreed to and or that they never communicated to you. Consistently placing blame and judgment on others while assuming they are perfect and or a victim. Demanding all of your time. This has the effect of alienating you from your friends without the confrontation. Taking no interest in what makes you happy. The list goes on.